Hey everybody, this is Alex Merced from alexmercedcoder.com, and this video is an introduction to RXJS, which stands for like Reactive X JavaScript or reactive extensions. And the idea is to create a way to manage data through a pattern referred to as an observable. Okay, this is still one that I'm still kind of wrapping my head around, but we'll kind of work through it and show you just kind of how it works, and then you can decide when you want to apply it. Like, if you've ever used Angular, like RxJS is like built into the fabric of Angular, and it's kind of like, hey, we want you to use this when you're doing like API calls to like do the thing. I honestly, I oftentimes find it like I feel like I'm doing extra steps to do something that's oftentimes simpler. But I think the point is that like when you're building larger or more complex apps, this is going to give you some more robustness in how you handle those different sources of data and how your app gets access to them in a way that's going to give you some more flexibility, and also just manage it better, because it's not just like just plain promises where you just sit there and say, okay, hey, when this thing's there, do this. You have a lot more sort of flexibility to transform the data in that process, to kind of control what data becomes available in the process. It's like it's a whole world. Like, as I was going through this documentation, there's a lot going on here. So we're going to scratch the surface. That's what we're going to do. Okay, like I've played with it in Angular, but mostly it's just been like, following the documentation on the HTTPS module. And okay, this is how they want me to do it, so I guess that's how I'm going to do it. So I spent today reading, again, the documentation to kind of just get a better idea of the concept. So here we go. Let's set up a project. So here I have a basic folder, and I'm going to create a new Npm project. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to just put this off to the side. Put this over here. Okay, and I think the library is just install RxJS. Can you give me some details on installation? Thank you. Yep, RxJS. That's what I thought. Okay. So I'm going to create a new Npm project. Npm init-y. Okay, so there's our new project. Ooh, I should probably call it something else, because that's going to cause an issue when I try to install RxJS. Practicing RxJS. And if you're not familiar with that problem, is if the name property on your package.json is the same as a library you're trying to install, it won't let you install it. Okay, I've learned that the hard way a few times. Npm install RxJS. And it's not that I try to name them after libraries I plan on downloading. It's oftentimes when I'm practicing something, I create a folder named after the library I'm going to be practicing with in that folder. So then when I create the npm, do the npm init-y, it automatically grabs the name of the folder. So just saying, watch out for that. It's an easy thing to make. It's an easy mistake to make. Npm install RxJS. So we have RxJS installed. Wonderful. Okay, so let me just create a index.js for us to play with. Okay, and okay. So what I'm going to import from, not const. Well, they are using module syntax. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use module syntax. So I'm going to turn on module syntax. So type module. That's how we turn that on. Okay, so now I can use module syntax too. Okay, and I mean the reason why they're doing it there is because oftentimes RxJS is, again, used with Angular, so it's used on the front end. So they have Webpack and they're using module syntax. Although I like module syntax, so I have no problem with that. Okay, so I'm going to just say import here, and then say from RxJS. I always just kind of like leave this empty so that I can do something like this, like have it give me like a list. Okay, observable. I want the observable class, which I think is this. Yeah, that's the class. Good. I'm going to want pipe. I'm going to want map. And I'm going to want of. Okay, I think that's probably a good place to start. Okay, so essentially the way this works is I would create an observable. So we'll just say const obs, short for observable. and we would create a new instance of the observable class. And what the observable class takes, it's a function that's essentially this. You're basically defining the subscribe function that you'll be using later, which is going to define how does this deliver data to the how does this deliver data to whoever subscribes to this observables. And again, so basically you have this thing that's kind of looking for data, and you're saying, okay, when the data comes in, I want to subscribe to that data. I want to get that data. So what we're going to do is we're going to use the function keyword, and this function is going to receive an argument referred to as the subscriber, which just is going to be like a collection of methods we can use to kind of describe, okay, what happens in this actions that this thing can take. So at its simplest, we can say subscriber.next. And what this does is provides a value, and we can provide multiple, as many values as we want. So I can be like, you know, Gouda subscriber.next. Okay, Gouda and subscriber dot, and then we'll say pepperjack subscriber dot next Munster. And then when it's done, I can say subscriber.complete, and that just kind of completes the what's they refer to as the contract, meaning like this thing opens up and then it promises you at some point it will be done, and after the thing completes, the promise is that it will give you no more data. So I can't do any next statements after complete. That's the end. Okay, and that's like the minimum. Okay, so now what I can do is separately say obs.subscribe, and then what happens here is that what I do is I describe what I'm getting. So essentially, this callback will run. Actually, there's a let's just do it that way. I think I can do it that way. Let me just confirm. Go back to seeing an example. Yeah. Okay, you'll see like later on you can. There's a different way you can do it with an object, but okay. So basically, what's going to happen is that this function will receive the piece of data. So we'll say, you know, the cheese, and then we will console log the cheese. So every time this next runs, that's going to trigger this callback from the subscribe. Okay, so essentially I am now subscribing to this thing and saying do this every time the thing that I'm subscribed to, the observable, gives me something. Okay, so essentially it's kind of like it's pushing data to me. So it's saying, hey, whenever you give me data, I'm not going to go there and say, hey, do you have data? I'm not pulling the data. I'm not saying, okay, hey, do you have it? I'm saying, when it arrives, give it to me. Oh, okay, let me go do something with it. Okay. And what makes this, where this gets cool is because you can do it with multiple values. And you'll see later on we can do it like asynchronously. So let's see here. Let's run this code and make sure that this works. Okay, so node index.js. Okay. Oh, my bad. I put the string of cheese here. Should be the variable of cheese. So let's do that. And you see Gouda, pepperjack, Munster. Okay. So every time, now what I could do is not all of these have to happen at the same time. Okay, so I could say something like set timeout. Okay. And this will be subscriber.next Gouda. And that's going to be 1 second. 2 seconds, 3 seconds, Gouda, Munster, pepperjack. So now if I run this, theoretically it should do the first set timeout. Well, all timeouts should kickstart. Now where we might run into a problem is that since we're running this asynchronously, that subscriber.complete might run before the other ones finish. Let's see if that causes a problem. Okay, and see we get no data And then the reason why that happened is because this next ended up running after this complete. So theoretically, if I want this to work out, I'd have to do it like this. 4 seconds. I mean, there's different ways you can do it, but let's just say 4 seconds, and then we would do subscriber.complete. And we don't really need to be 4 seconds. We just need to be like 3100. Okay. Cool. See Gouda, Munster, Pepperjack. Now let's see what happens if I don't bother completing it. Gouda, Munster, Pepperjack. It still ends. Like you still end up kind of in the same place. Like it's the complete is just going to allow it to do some cleanup operations. If you for sure just kind of like are done. Also, it triggers you could trigger a function to run on completion. Okay. So I could do something like this per se. Const cheeses equals an empty array. And then what I do here is that instead of passing in that one function, I can pass this object with 3 different functions. Next. Okay, error, which is this is the function I'll run anytime that there's an error. So we do like, you see, we'll do an error. Okay, and then there is then the complete callback. So just make sure that all 3 possibilities are possible. What I ideally like to do is wrap this in a try catch block. Try catch error. Okay, so there's a try catch block. Let's move this code into that try catch block. Okay, let's let prettier do its thing. Cool. And now in this catch block, again, if something goes wrong, we would just do subscriber dot error. Okay, so basically, and then this error action then would then trigger this thing from whoever subscribes to the observable. And again, I can create as many of these subscribes as I want. So imagine like in something like React, I create some sort of like universal observer with like state that I plan on using all over the place, and then I can import that observer into my different components and subscribe and say, okay, hey, whenever the data comes in, do this, go update my state in that component. And you can kind of imagine how that would be kind of beneficial or kind of cool. That's kind of what like Angular is oftentimes doing in combination with services, because services can be injected in pretty much any component, and you just do that. Okay, so let's describe these functions. So again, next is always going to receive whatever piece of data we get from X. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say cheeses dot push. We're going to push into this array X. And then what's going to happen is if there's an error, we'll just console log the error. And what's going to happen here, complete, is just a function that runs when it's done. I don't think it receives anything. I'll have to double check that. But either way, what I'm going to do is I'm going to console.log the array. And the idea is that this shouldn't happen until after all 3 of these nexts have run. So in that case, that array, that cheeses array, should have all 3 cheeses inside of it if this works the way I think it's going to work. Okay, and see, wait until all 3 of them were done, and then it console log the array with it completed. So then you can imagine that you want to, there's a piece of data that you want in an array, or a piece of data you want in an object, but you need to grab data from multiple places to construct it. Okay, and so basically you can use something like this where you can sit there and say, okay, hey, subscribe, and you want to wait till the data is completely assembled. You can kind of use a pattern like this, and that's kind of cool. But you can see that it does require a little bit more thinking. Another cool thing you can do with the observable is you can start creating all sorts of transformations to. So in this case, what you do is you change something called pipe. Okay, and what pipe does is that it's essentially a pipe a chain of functions you use to transform the observable. You're really creating a new one. So you're taking this observable and then returning a new one that's altered. Okay, and basically what you do here is inside the pipe function, you have all these built-in functions built into RxJS that will transform the observable. And I'm sure there's libraries of other transformer functions. But I can say something like map. Okay, so I can say in here, map. And then basically this takes a function that grabs, so every time next runs, map is going to run, and it's going to allow me to transform the next bit of information. So I can sit there and say, hey, every time a cheese gets next, I can just say, okay, let's return cheese and inject X in there. Okay. So we alter the string. So essentially what's going to happen now, really what I am going to subscribe to this new observable that pipe's returning. Okay, so pipe took the original observer. So what's saved here is the observable after all these transformations. So now take a look at what the end result's going to look like. Okay, and what I'm going to just do is just console.log receive data. So you can see like data got received. Oops, Control Z. Okay, now if I do this, receive data, and there you go. You see, like now, each of the things got cheese added. So imagine like, okay, you have your main observable that's grabbing the data from different places, doing next, and now you want to transform each piece of data as you go. Then you use map, and that'll do the transformation. And then now the observer just observes it. Okay, so you're creating this sort of like process in a sense. Your process, you not only can you say, hey, I want to retrieve the data and make it possible for other parts of your application to make use of that data. Because again, I can just call that subscribe function in different scopes, and that's the beauty of it. Like if I declare this observer within a fairly grander scope, I can call it inside of a function and use like stuff that's within that function scope, or call it somewhere else, and write these callbacks wherever I need it, and have this data and the stuff in that scope available to me, which is really cool. Okay, so like that's cool. Okay, and again, this is only scratching the surface. We'll go through the docs in a second so you can see like how much more stuff there is. But I think at this point you're starting to kind of see like, okay, this is kind of cool. We can compose some fairly complex state logic here, and basically abstract a lot of our stateful logic into here, into an observable, and just deliver the observable to our view logic. And our view logic then just gets the data perfectly set up and received and just does its thing. Which again, the appeal of that, I can see the appeal of that. Still a little overwhelming with how much stuff there is here. Okay, so another thing we could do, so let me just comment all this out. So these are like transformational methods. They transform the observable. There's also creational methods that are built in. So for example, this of function. This of function just says, okay, hey, just we'll just create a observable from the data you pass in here. So that way you don't have to like write all this out. So it's just going to assume that every argument is a piece of data you want to next. Okay, so I just want to say again, Gouda, Munster, Munster, and Pepperjack. And I did realize I misspelled Munster earlier. It just wasn't worth spending a second to go fix that. Okay, Gouda, Munster, Pepperjack. Okay, so now that creates a new observable. Let's save that in a variable. Const obs equals. Okay. And now I can do the same thing here. I can just say obs.subscribe. And again, real simple. And again, I can do the more complex object pattern, but just to kind of show that this works. Console.log x. Okay, and that'll just give me Gouda, Munster, Pepperjack. Okay, so you have some methods that simplify this whole process, so I don't have to type all this out. So I know I just have a batch of values that I want to go package as an observable. I can then just like do that. Okay, so I can imagine, I get some data asynchronously. I use this of method, and like let's say React, I do like I call set I maybe change some like update the state in an upper level component, and then this observable gets passed down as props down the ways, and then all the other components can then subscribe to it. Let's say, I can kind of see that different ways you can use it. No, none that are like a pattern that I've clearly seen implemented, at least in React, and in Angular for sure. In Vue, well, I don't know. I gotta go play with some of the other Vue libraries like Vuex. I haven't played with that yet to kind of see how more advanced state management gets done in Vue. Okay, and then like Svelte already has like stores built in, and it's pretty straightforward to use. Cool. But that's pretty much the basics of an observable. I mean, you can already do a lot with just that. But let's just go kind of show you like how much more there is. So let's go to operators. So operators is what we refer to all these functions, like the creational functions and all these methods. So again, we saw of and map. These are creation of is a creation operator, meaning observable from. Okay, map, again, map allowed us to transform inside the pipe. Okay, so again, pipe, we can pass in a lot of operators. And again, there's a whole bunch, so you can just like see this goes on. Creation operators, so see, these are just to create an observable. Okay, join creation operator, so I'm assuming that's going to be like joining multiple observables. Transformation, so these are ones that like map that'll transform your scan. Is actually pretty cool. Basically it's like use effect in a sense, where like anytime like the thing a dependency updates, it runs this function again and keeps like a cumulative total. It's pretty cool. Or it's more like reduce. Reduce is really what I'm thinking of. Okay, switch. So yeah, see, there's a lot of stuff here. Okay, this again would be one of those things where like you could probably use it pretty straightforward right out of the box with just what we learned in this video. But there's just so much more room to do all sorts of really interesting things. Yeah. Okay, so like this one library has a lot going on. You can do some pretty sophisticated stateful logic and just build it all into the observable, and then have the rest of your app just listen to that observable. So the rest of the app doesn't have to like worry about like that stateful logic. It's all just kind of tucked away into the way observable is constructed. And when the data comes in, your app gets it. And that's kind of like the idea. You observe, and stuff comes out. It's kind of like going to a restaurant and you order like the sampler plate. You don't have to worry about how the food gets made. When the food comes out, the waiter brings it to you, and that's the deal. Okay, or actually probably more accurate, like subscribing to a subscription box. Okay, when the box comes in. You don't care about the process that happened between the dates of delivery. You just care about delivery, and then you enjoy the box. So my name is Alex Merced from alexmercedcode.com. Hopefully you guys enjoyed that. Make sure to subscribe to this YouTube channel. Leave a like on the video. Also, make sure to follow me on Twitter at alexmercedcoder. Make sure to also subscribe to my podcast, WebDev 101, and go to devnursery.com and join the Slack and Discord community. I'll see y'all later. Have a great day and enjoy.